So disruptive innovation. If you haven't read the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, please pick up a copy at the end of this session. It charts disruptive innovation using the hard drive industry as an example. Contains a lot of fascinating data and insights into how to create profitable businesses by fucking with the status quo. So disruptive innovation, let's define it. According to Wikipedia, disruptive innovation displaces existing businesses in a way that the market does not expect, typically by designing for a new set of consumers and later by lowering the prices in an existing market. So disruptive technology, as you can see in this chart from the book Innovator's Dilemma, just cuts through all the existing players and ultimately ends up winning in any existing market. According to the Harvard Business Review, disruptive companies earn 20 times as much money as existing players in the industry and are 6 times more successful. Some impressive numbers there. So let's look at some examples of companies that have really disrupted in the last couple of years. First and foremost is Square. The founders of Square said, what if anybody could accept credit cards simply by attaching a dongle to their cell phone rather than having to pay a $500 or $1,000 application fee to open a merchant account, submit to background checks, wait weeks and weeks for their application to get processed, and they opened up credit card processing to a whole new segment of consumers that previously were unable to accept credit cards. And now you see Square at food trucks and farmers markets and all sorts of small local merchants that previously were unable to accept Visa and MasterCard and Amex. The guy here, you might not recognize him, you might do. His name is Barry. He created a marketplace called Second Market. He said, what if I let accredited investors buy shares in private companies before they go public? So through Second Market, Barry essentially took Twitter and Facebook and Palantir semi-public by allowing accredited investors to buy shares from employees and ex-employees of those companies. He decided to fuck with the NASDAQ market and with the New York Stock Exchange and allow people to buy stock in small private companies. Airbnb, obviously disrupting the hotel industry and allowing people to make additional income by renting spare bedrooms. And iStock Photo is another example. Before iStock Photo came around, a traditional stock photo agencies such as Getty Images would charge $500, $5,000, $10,000 to license just a handful of photos for your website. So iStock Photo said to themselves, what if we undercut the existing players in this space by more than 99% and sell stock photos for just $1 each versus $500 to $1,000. And this opened up a whole new segment of buyers who were previously unable to access stock photo imagery. So all of a sudden you had bloggers, you had marketers using stock photos in their banner ads, in their print magazine ads, people that were previously unable to purchase from Getty Images and the other big stock photo libraries, including Colibris, which Bill Gates invested in. Unfortunately, if he had bought shares in iStock Photo, he would have made a lot more money. Uber obviously disrupted the taxi and limo companies and opened up a whole new segment of buyers. Before Uber came around, the market for black car services was quite small. It was very inconvenient. You have to browse through the yellow pages or go online and search for, black car companies. You'd have to call them, book an appointment. You'd probably be paying by the hour. So if you only needed a short ride across town, it wasn't practical. So by making it more accessible on a mobile app, they were able to blow up and increase the potential pool of buyers by a factor of more than 100x. Obviously, they've been incredibly successful in doing that. Plenty of Fish is another fantastic example. They looked at all the dating websites that were on the internet, Match.com, eHarmony.com, JDate, and they said, fuck those guys, we're just going to do it for free and make money through advertising. And the guy who has started Plenty of Fish now is a very, very wealthy man. He's making millions and millions of dollars in cash every single month with no outside investors, simply by saying we're going to cut the price of dating sites to zero. So he decided to disrupt the existing model by finding a whole new set of people who otherwise who have never bought a Match.com or eHarmony membership but are happy to sign up for an account on Plenty of Fish, click on a few ads occasionally, and that makes them enough money to put them in really, really good shape. So those are some examples of interesting companies that have come up in the last couple of years. I also want to talk about Hired.com. Hired is my latest company that I've co-founded with Doug Fierstein and Alan Grant. And Hired is a marketplace for recruiting. One of the biggest challenges over the last 15 years that I've always faced as an entrepreneur is finding talented engineers. It seems that no matter what I did, I was always coming up short. I was posting job ads on Monster and Career Builder and Craigslist. It wasn't getting me anywhere. I was using my personal network, but that might be good for 1 or 2 hires. And it's not good enough for the 10 people I need by the end of next quarter. I'd used recruiting agencies. At one point, I was using 30 different recruiters. And it was still a terrible, miserable experience. So I decided at the end of this to try and solve the problem on behalf of every company in Silicon Valley and New York and eventually the world. So what we created was a curated 2-sided marketplace for engineers, product managers, data scientists. And we said, anybody who's interested in potentially exploring their career options and seeing what they're worth on the market and getting some interesting job offers, go on the site, create an application, and for 1 week only, you'll be visible to over 700 hiring managers, and those hiring managers will make you offers to interview, including full salary and equity disclosure up front. So we launched this idea having no idea how well it would work. We rounded up 88 engineers from Google, Twitter, and Facebook. We put them on the site for a week, and they received over $30 million in job offers. That was our first test of this. It blew our expectations away by a 3x factor. It was so unusual and so different from the existing status quo that engineers had to go through in the past in order to find new opportunities. Prior to Hired, the only ways to job hunt were using your personal network, which only takes you so far and only gets you into so many companies. Number 2 is you could submit your resume. You could go on Airbnb and submit an application, but they might or might not get back to you. It might be a really long, drawn-out process. And at the end, you might just get a really low-ball offer that doesn't match your expectations, and you just wasted 8 or 10 hours interviewing. And the third option before Hired was using recruiters. The problem with recruiters is they're basically used car salesmen. No offense if anybody here is a used car salesman. I'm sure there's a few good ones in there, but recruiters work for companies. They don't work for candidates. Their goal is to close a deal so they can make their 20-25% commission, and their only goal is to have the candidates stay at that job for 61 days so their money, their fee becomes non-refundable. So engineers using recruiters really created this really false dynamic because the recruiters were representing the company's best interests and not the engineers. So with Hired, we disrupted them all by flipping it on its head and saying, really, who's in control here is the talent. If you're a fantastic engineer, you're never going to have trouble finding a job. But let's create a platform, let's create a marketplace that allows you to do that on your terms without having to shoot resumes onto career sites, without having to deal with scummy recruiters, and allowing you to discover opportunities that you wouldn't have found through your own personal network at cool companies that you otherwise might have never ever heard of. So it's been going really great. This is the example of how Hired works. We're basically a technology platform that disrupts agencies, just like Uber disrupted taxi companies, and just like Airbnb disrupted travel agencies, and Starwood and all the other big hotel groups. We're basically connecting buyers and sellers directly through a transparent, efficient market and automating a lot of the stuff that has traditionally been done very manually. So why did we launch Hired now? Well, first and foremost, it was getting really annoying for the last 15 years having to recruit talent and just being constantly blocked with all these obstacles and all these terrible methods. Over and over again, I heard from engineers that they were getting bombarded with 5, 10, 15 spam emails a week from recruiters. So they started blocking out the good opportunities with the bad opportunities. And it became a really boiler room experience. So we decided that we could use a marketplace mechanism to really create a lot of efficiencies in the marketplace. So over the past 12 months since we launched the business, we've signed up over 700 companies. These are some of the big names you might have heard of. We did this all without any marketing, simply because the candidates that we represent on our platform are curated and high quality, that all these companies just come to our door without any outside business development or sales effort. This is one of the big powers of creating something that's truly disruptive. If you create something that's really 10x or 100x better than the next alternative, a lot of the times the customers will just talk among themselves and come to you in a relatively short amount of time. So for all these companies, they were traditionally using job boards and outside agencies, and they have their own recruiting teams, and they still use LinkedIn to some extent. But the experience they have with hired is so powerful that they've come onto the platform without really much effort on our part. Some more logos, Lyft, clear slides, Staples, etc. That's a little bit about Hired and how we're taking on the recruiting industry. But I want to talk a bit about 99 Designs, which is the company I spent 4 years of my life building before this. And for those that don't know, 99 Designs is a marketplace for crowdsourced graphic design, which essentially allows designers to earn money by competing solely based on their skills that they have and not on their location, not on their education, and not on their age. So what happens with 99 Designs is a small company or business owner comes to us, specifies a budget. It could be $500, it could be $5,000. They specify what they're looking for, a new logo, a brochure, a website design, and then designers from all over the world see these requirements, see the budget, and they compete for this money by submitting their best ideas through a marketplace. So a typical small business owner who's looking for a logo design on 99 Designs gets anywhere from 100 to 150 different designs to choose from. And this is radically different and radically better than what came before 99 Designs. The old process was so fundamentally broken. I hate to admit this, I actually spent $10,000 on the logo for my first company. $10,000 I could have used for advertising, for marketing, for paying out bonuses to my employees. It was completely fucked up, and 99 Designs now has changed that forever. So you no longer have to ask for designer recommendations. You no longer have to spend hours reviewing portfolios. You don't have to worry about the designer that you hired for your logo going on vacation in the middle of your project or ditching you for another higher paying project. And finally, because you have so many options to choose from, you have 100 or 150 designs that were created just for you, just based on your needs. The chances of you finding something that you're happy with is exponentially better than anything that came before 99 Designs. So you're guaranteed to like a design, or we send you 100% of your money back in cash, which is another fundamentally disruptive idea that we adopted at 99 Designs. No freelance designer, no graphic design agency, no creative studio in the world before 99 Designs will give you 50 or 100 or 150 designs and then ask you to, and then waive their invoice if you weren't happy with the results. So 99 Designs really eliminated a lot of the risk associated with obtaining and sourcing graphic design. So we eliminated, the quotation process. You no longer have to review portfolios, didn't have to negotiate contracts. You got a result you wanted in 7 days versus 7 or 10 weeks. You got hundreds of original concepts to choose from. And like I mentioned, if you don't like any of the designs, you got 99 Designs, you're able to request a refund and get all of your money back. This was literally a 100x improvement on things that came before it. So since 99 Designs launched, we've paid out $66 million to designers all around the world. We've helped 267,000 companies in over 150 countries source graphic designs for their small businesses. We have a new design being uploaded to the site every 5 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we've hosted dozens and dozens of designer meetups worldwide. There's now actually hundreds and hundreds of people who are making a full-time living off of the clients they find on our marketplace. These are some of the international meetups that we've hosted in East Asia when we did a grand tour. All these people have fantastic skill. They have fantastic talent, but they were always cut off from opportunity. They never had a fancy business suit. They didn't have their office in Midtown Manhattan, and therefore they couldn't get access to the US market and the European market. But by using 99 Designs, all of a sudden they can find thousands of new and interesting projects to work on every single week. They choose the projects that they're most interested and passionate about and that suit their needs and tastes and interests. And if they end up being the most successful designer, they get paid. And they don't have to deal with any of the traditional hassles associated with invoicing and collection and contracts, etc. So this is our Eastern European meetup, and we had like 70 or 80 designers show up. And this is one we had in Indonesia. They created a huge billboard-sized mural that you can see there in the background as a group project. So there's a fantastic video of it on YouTube that you can Google. So as we were creating 99 Designs and we were getting all this great feedback, from small business owners who were so happy with the results that they were getting, we also got a lot of shit from the existing companies that we were disrupting. The freelancers and the agencies who had previously charged me $10,000 for a logo weren't happy that all of a sudden they had all these designers who were competing purely based on their skill and not the fact that they had a Hugo Boss suit in an office in Midtown Manhattan. So here on the screen, you can see some of the headlines that we had to contend with on a daily basis. 99 Designs, the evil that changed names. 99 Designs, Bullshit 2.0. Hacks and cheapskates unite. Immoral, blah, blah, blah. 99 Designs sticks up two fingers at designers. That's one of my favorites there. Why designers hate crowdsourcing. Exploitation as a business practice. Whenever you're endangering someone's livelihood, as many people felt we were doing with 99 Designs, they lash out aggressively, and no amount of logic, no amount of argument or reasoning can change their mind. But what they weren't realizing is what we were doing is actually creating a whole new market of buyers. People that use 99 Designs to get a logo for $300 or $500 who have never in the entire world engaged a professional agency and paid $10,000. We're actually creating future clients for them, just like iStock Photo created a whole new segment of buyers for stock photography. So obviously Uber has also faced very similar criticism. They've endangered the taxi cab industry and many people who make a living driving taxis, and they've had to deal with numerous issues, being served papers and being shut out of many different cities. Airbnb obviously has had a lot of backlash from the hotel associations who feel that Airbnb disrupts their livelihood and their ability to make a living. Obviously Airbnb has even been faced with taxation in New York and San Francisco, among other cities. So it's important to think as you're creating disruption, this is actually the sort of impact that you want to have. If nobody is getting pissed off about what you're doing, then what you're doing is probably not significant enough, at least when it comes to the tech space. It's actually really, really good to have this polarizing effect that you see with, like we did 99 Designs, like Uber has with taxi associations, like Airbnb with the hotels. It means that as long as your customers love you and the established status quo hates you, you're creating something that's fundamentally very meaningful. So creating disruption, I kind of want to walk you through a process and a bit of a framework that I've been working on about how you can think about ideas and sort of industries where you can really have a significant impact. What sort of questions should you be asking yourself when you're brainstorming ideas about new services and new products and new marketplaces to create? So first and foremost, like what services or processes are fundamentally broken, overpriced, or terribly frustrating? In my case, it was getting graphic design before 99 Designs existed, having to contact 10 designers, wait weeks for them to get back, negotiate pricing and contracts and review portfolios, and then end up paying $5,000 or $10,000 for a design I hated. That was terribly frustrating purchasing experience. So it's no wonder that many more people didn't engage professional graphic designers. It was just too painful. Before iStock Photo came around, if you wanted professional stock photography for your brochure or your website, you actually had to call up Getty Images and fax paper contracts before iStock Photo came around. And with Hired, if I wanted to see resumes of engineers who were interested in interviewing for new jobs, I'd have to contact 5 or 10 or 15 recruitment agencies and then hope that a few of them email me resumes, and I'd have to look through those resumes, email back to the agencies, because those resumes were often censored for names and contact information. It was just a very painful process. And now with Hired, every single week, companies can just come on board and view a curated list of talent that's interested in interviewing for new opportunities without having to go through the middlemen, without having to go through all the bullshit that's existed in the industry before. The other type of question you can ask yourself is what type of assets have no liquidity and need a marketplace that connects buyers and sellers? So what do people have that they would sell if it was only easier and less painful? My co-founder, Doug Fierstein, previously founded a company called YouSell, where it's very easy to sell your iPhone or your iPad or other electronics that you have lying around the house without having to go through the process of auctioning it off on eBay, which is very painful and frustrating and time-consuming. I also created a company called Flippa.com, which is a marketplace for buying and selling websites that's transacted over $100 million in websites, because I realized that there was a lot of people that were writing small blogs and websites that were making $500 or $1,000 a month in Google AdSense. And when they got bored of the project, there was really no way to liquidate that asset. So we created a marketplace where people could auction those websites and even auction old domain names that they were no longer interested in owning. And that created a liquidity in a marketplace that previously didn't have it. Some of the stats on Flippa, this is an older screenshot, but we're selling a couple of $1 million in websites every single week. So the big thing to ask is, how can you create an offering that's 10 times or 100 times better than the next best alternative? Unless you really want to spend a huge amount of your time and effort on sales and marketing and pushing the ball up the hill. If you spend all your time and effort up front instead on creating something that's well and truly 10 times better than the existing status quo, you'll save yourself a lot of effort and heartache later. Especially when dealing with startups, if something's only 50% better than the existing solution to a problem, it's actually really risky to switch to a new vendor, especially if it's a small 3, 4, 5, 10-person company. In order for a business to take that leap of faith, or for them to switch a way of doing things, in order to implement a new process, or to subscribe to a new service, in order to adopt new enterprise software in their company, they have to see an improvement that's much more than just incremental. It has to be massively, massively better than what else is out there. This is a quote from Seth Godin. He's an author who's written numerous fantastic marketing books, including The Purple Cow. The quote says, "When the thing you sell has communication built in, when it's remarkable and worth talking about, when it changes the game, marketing seems a lot easier. Of course, that's because you did all the marketing up front when you invented the thing, saving you the expense and trouble of yelling about it." I really like this quote. It's held true for 99 Designs. It's held true for Flippa. It's held true for Hired so far. I've had to do very, very little business development and sales because the things that we created were so remarkably different and so remarkably better than the existing status quo that once the first few initial customers got a taste of it, they told their friends, they told their friends, they told the media told more people, and then it just kind of, the ball rolls downhill. You no longer have to spend 40, 50, 60% of your budget on sales and marketing and buying banner ads and pay-per-click ads, because what you have is unique, so much better than everything else out there. When your customers think of going back to the old way of doing things, it just seems too painful. So that's sort of the end goal if you're trying to create something really disruptive that becomes really, really big. Other questions that you can ask yourself when you're thinking about creating disruption and innovation hacking is, how can you change the infrastructure, the rules of the game, or the flow of information? So as an example, on Hired, one of the big things that we created that never existed before in the recruiting industry is transparency around salaries. The companies all of a sudden were forced to make an actual number and attach it to every opportunity that they presented to engineers. So that talent wouldn't have to waste time interviewing for jobs where expectations were out of alignment. At the same time, we showed the companies what everybody else was offering. So on Hired, we have John Smith from Google, who's interested in new jobs, and he gets 3 offers from Pinterest and Palantir and 99 Designs. All those employers will actually see each other's offers, which creates competition and urgency and transparency, which had never existed before. How can you redefine a service as a product or the other way around? Sometimes thinking about how you can change paradigms is a really interesting way of finding some interesting segments of the market that are in need of disruption. And finally, what services could be provided 90% cheaper or provided to a much wider market? So how can you cut the price of something drastically? Not just by 50%, not just by 60%, but what about 90%? Or even making it free in the case of Plenty of Fish, which all of a sudden killed the $20 a month dating subscription fee and just ended up making bank by monetizing through advertising. So I want to leave some time for questions, but the day before something becomes a breakthrough, it's just a crazy idea. So I encourage all of you to think about some of the questions I posed here and create a framework about how to create these out-of-this-world ideas that just end up taking a life of their own once they're released into the market. Think really, really big. Tackle really big and challenging problems. Don't confine yourself to just making incremental improvements in existing services and software. I think the world is riper for disruption than ever before. It's much cheaper and easier to get something off the ground in the history of the internet. It's easier to test ideas, to throw stuff out there, create a landing page, send out some emails, go to some customer meetings, create a pitch deck, and show it to your friends and prospective customers. There's really no reason to delay. So I ask you, what's your crazy idea? I think we have a little bit of time for questions, so I'll take a couple of questions.
Besides that question, which maybe I'll get to later, but a practical question you asked in terms of the design company.
Yes.
So I get it, except for one part. In order to have 200-300 people to show a logo,
yes,
obviously they have to invest the time, right?
yes,
But only one of them is going to win.
yes,
So I would have thought, if that was me, if I was you and I was thinking about it, I would say to myself, wow, if 100, let's say 100 people apply, 99 are going to lose out. What's their incentive? Obviously, you solved that problem. That's what I'm asking. What's the incentive of those 99 who aren't going to win to actually put together a good product? They can't do something quickly, otherwise nobody will go for it.
Yep. So the question is, why do designers on 99 Designs participate in design contests without the guaranteed assurance of payment? And the answer we found to that question is, number one, in some cases they live in low-cost countries where $300 or $500 is equivalent to a full month's salary. And the second, actually much more important answer to that question is, they use it as sales. So once they win that contest, even if it's only 1 in 50 contests, they own that customer for life. They created that logo. Now they have a relationship with that customer. They can sell them a brochure, a business card design, letterhead, stationery, banner ads, etc. So just in the same way that designers in Manhattan, they go on sales pitches, they write proposals, they respond to RFPs. They have no guarantee of payment for the time and effort invested in their outbound sales efforts. But many designers aren't very great at sales and marketing. So here they're competing purely based on their talent and not on how nice their RFP or proposal is or how competitive their price quote is.
And how do you prevent someone from stealing one of their ideas?
So how do we prevent people stealing ideas? Well, we ask all the companies on 99 Designs to pay up front, and we hold their money till they award a winner. So
one of the questions I had was with disruption, how do you deal with scale? Because one of the things is, okay, I get this word of mouth, I'm getting a big avalanche, and now I realize why my web server that was 1,000 users has 100,000 now. And in terms of Hired, what are the scale challenges that you face right now?
So for us, it's really about geographic expansion. We have engineers from Atlanta and Portland and Austin and Utah signing up, and we haven't gone to market and create liquidity on both sides of the marketplace. So unfortunately, at the moment, we're rejecting a huge portion of the talent that's coming to us organically through word of mouth because we're unable to provide them our experience. Much in the same way that Uber, for a long time, they weren't serving nearly as many cities as they were now. And what they simply did is they had a God view mode, and they were able to see on this world map every time someone opened the Uber app and was unable to request a taxi. That's how they prioritized which markets they rolled out into.
So I can understand that the marketplace is a connection between sellers and buyers. So how do you bring the sellers and buyers at the same time? Because obviously there's a challenge, right, when you're starting a product. So the second question is, how do you build that trust initially? Because I can imagine 4 years ago, when you started at 99 Designs, right?
Yep.
So how did you build that trust to bring those 88 engineers or those 100 users?
So building trust, I think you just basically try and take risk elimination to its maximum extreme. So for Hired, for example, we don't charge employees unless they successfully hire someone. We don't even ask for a credit card number. We don't even ask for a signed contract. Once they're approved to use our marketplace, we trust that they'll do the right thing, and we'll get notified when they make a hire. and we have some systems in place to ensure that happens more than 99.9% of the time. But we took out risk elimination to its maximum extreme. With 99 Designs, for example, to get customers who had never purchased professional graphic design services before, we took risk elimination to its extreme by offering the 100% money-back guarantee. It was absolutely crazy. It had never been done before. What if people just come and steal these ideas and don't pay? But most people are honest, thankfully. So.
Following up on that question, for marketplace, you always need to hit that critical mass of providers and buyers. And the providers won't come till the buyers come, and vice versa. How do you solve that chicken and egg problem?
Well, you always have to focus on the hardest part of the marketplace first. And for most marketplaces, it's usually the demand side. So if you look at Odesk and Elance, their challenge is not finding enough freelance writers and translators and bookkeepers. It's always finding the small business owners that need to hire them. So you always should focus on the hardest side of the marketplace first. In our case, we thought it'd be the engineers. So that's what we did first, to sign up the engineers. Then we were able to go to the employers and say, hey, we have this pool of talent that's potentially interested in talking to you. You can talk to as many people as you want. There's no risk, no upfront fee. You don't have to give us a credit card number. Just log in, and if you don't like any of them, tell us to fuck off. And
But what's the incentive for engineers to sign up when they don't know their companies? Because you approach the companies later.
Yeah. So our pitch to the engineers was find out how much you're worth, basically. We elevate them on a pedestal, and we appeal to their sense of curiosity. It's like all these companies will potentially make you salary offers up front. You can choose whether or not you want to interview with them based on the numbers they put out there. So a lot of people signed up simply out of curiosity at the beginning. And over time, as the marketplace matured and we had more and bigger and more legitimate companies participating, then that became less of an issue, and we were able to filter the engineer talent much harder and tone down our messaging. So it's no longer all about just find out how much you're worth. It's actually discover your next challenge, find your next perfect match.
What were some of your biggest learnings while building 99 Designs and Hired? I mean, things you would have, now when you think about it, you would love to do it a different way.
So biggest learnings in building 99 Designs and Hired. I think at 99 Designs, we probably weren't aggressive enough. We bootstrapped the company for the first 3 years. We didn't raise our Series A till 3 years into the business, which was a $35 million Series A from Excel. So because of that, we saw a lot of competitors, clones and copycats emerge. We saw companies launch in Brazil and Europe and Germany, and we ended up acquiring many of those companies later point in time. But if we had the capital earlier on, we would have been more aggressive in international expansion, so these competitors wouldn't have had a chance to establish their foothold in international countries. The one good thing that we did at 99 Designs, though, was actually we bought the 99 Designs name in 20 different countries. So we have 99designs.it and .se and .co.jp, and we've now launched in like 10 languages in 20 countries. So it's been really useful. If we had waited till much later, and we didn't have the foresight to do that, we'd be just dealing with a whole bunch of extortionists and domain name squatters and other lowlife who, of course we have the trademark, but you don't want to go to court and spend 6 months and $50,000 in legal bills just to get your name in a country that you need. So, with Hired, for example, we bought hired.co.uk when we launched in London. We're ready to go.
Speaking of slime balls, how have bankers helped you?
Bankers?
Yeah. So you can only raise so much equity until your company needs to borrow money to pay payroll, etc. What have you learned about dealing with bankers in launching these companies? 99
Designs never had any venture debt. It was all bootstrapped and profitable from day one. So the $35 million was, cushioned for international expansion and for a rainy day, but we never had to use venture debt. Raj?
Yes, and so now that you are super successful, but when you were in a startup stage, like most of us here, what were some of the problems you faced, and how did you take care of those problems?
So obviously, problems are usually, you have issues with fraud and collections in certain companies. 99 Designs, we built very sophisticated anti-fraud technology because we were essentially acting as the middleman. We're collecting the money up front and then paying out designers. And if we got charged back 4 or 6 weeks later after we had wired the money via Western Union to a designer in Eastern Asia or Eastern Europe would be on the hook for it. So things like that have obviously been frustrating, but they're all solvable problems. I guess the thing is you don't know what you're going to run up against till you run up against it. So in the interest of getting a product to market quickly, it's best not to over-engineer, not to overbuild the technology up front. The first version of Hired was basically just 2 web forms. You had a web form for the developers, we had a web form for the employers, and it's only once we had a database on both sides of the marketplace that we actually built the 3rd tier of technology to connect the 2 together, and even then it was super primitive. So I think one mistake that marketplace entrepreneurs often make is they overthink the problem and try and solve problems before they exist. You can run a marketplace businesses in email and spreadsheets because all you're doing is connecting buyers and sellers together. So it's actually a really, really good idea to do a lot of shit manually, even though it's painful and it's not scalable, but it helps you intimately learn what the pain points are in the process. So then later on, you're building technology to solve the right problems and not just building technology for the problems that you think you'll have.
Is there any quality control that you build into Hired or 99 Designs to weed out people who are just, opening multiple accounts and submitting multiple designs, stuff like that?
So quality control on 99 Designs and Hired. On 99 Designs, any designer can submit designs. We don't ask them to submit educational background credentials or anything like that. They're being judged purely on the output of their work. That being said, all first-time designers on 99 Designs have their designs go into a review queue, and our internal community team has a look at those designs, and if they are really, really poor quality, then we suspend that designer. That's mainly to maintain perception of quality in the marketplace. You don't want to present clients and paying customers with designs created, bitmap, whatever. Back.
Hi, you've created breakthrough companies and done disruptive models. How do you work in your daily basis to assure that those companies are the ones that are going to disrupt their own model when the time comes, instead of being disrupted by others?
So that's a good question. How do you ensure that a company you created to disrupt the status quo doesn't get disrupted by the next generation of businesses? Some of the interesting insights that you actually get from the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, is that a lot of the disruption always comes on the lower end. As a business, your tendency is to always gravitate towards creating more features, more functionality, more complexity, targeting bigger accounts, more complex customers, etc. So one of the recent launches that we had, 99 Designs, did the exact opposite thing. We launched a service called Swiftly, where for $15, you can get designs tweaked. So we actually undercut ourselves and create a new lower-end offering serving a market that we didn't know yet exists. Sort of cut off potential competition. So as you grow in your business, you're always thinking about the next step to serve your existing customers and new customers, but sometimes it's just better to scoop up underneath and offer something where you're not even sure it will work. And that's sort of the examples that the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, gives, is the disruptors are often creating products and services for a market that isn't immediately identifiable, and the market doesn't even really come into fruition until the product or service is on the market. So like if iStock Photo went and polled customers about stock photo usage, the feedback probably wouldn't have been as good till they created the market and offered $1 stock photos, because people didn't know what they didn't know because it didn't exist.
Let's follow up on that question. So how would you convince your investors and your board, perhaps, to do such a thing? What will be a line of reasoning? Because that's against their interest, I think.
Well, it's always going to be a small, you never go in all feed in the smallest project that may or may not work out. It's always experimental and MVP, so you don't invest too much time and too much effort. It's always going to be one of several things you have up in the air. But in the model of a lean startup and MVPs, most boards are willing to give the founders and founding team a lot of leeway in testing new ideas, even if the market is unclear and even if the price points are lower than what the company has been traditionally used to charging. In the back?
So one of your bullet points for disruptive technology is changing a service into a product. Can you give an example of that?
I had several examples at the tip of my tongue, but I'll get back to you afterwards. can have a talk about it. I had a couple.
So you said you had a lot of backlash. So what did you do? Did you rebut or just keep?
So how do we respond to the backlash? So actually, like 6 months after we launched 99 Designs, we actually got a letter from the American Institute of Graphic Artists saying, please shut down your business. You're hurting our industry and our association. Here's our price book. It says the minimum you can charge for a logo is $7,500. So, you're really hurting our business. We shredded that letter, and I wish we framed it instead. But for a long time, we actually read like all the comments, all the forum threads, all the blog comments that were against 99 Designs. It was actually like really, really depressing. I took it really personally. And we tried to respond with logic and reasoning, saying, we're opening up a new market of customers for you. The people who are buying $300 logos now, when their businesses grow and mature, might want to hire a designer or an agency and pay $5,000, etc. By the end of the day, people were so emotional about it because we were attacking their livelihood that no amount of logic or reasoning or rationalizing could change their mind. So we stopped doing it because we realized that no matter what we did, they would never become fans, they would never become customers, and they've become contributors to the community. So we're much better off focusing our mental energy and our time on serving the clients and the customers in the community that were passionate about what we had and that saw the value in what we were offering. Unfortunate thing that in our case is that we didn't have any regulatory agencies to deal with, like Airbnb and Uber do, right? So we could safely ignore the American Institute of Graphic Artists and tell them to fuck off, and they couldn't write a letter to their congressman, they couldn't hire a lobbyist on K Street in Washington and get a law or legislation passed against us. So we're pretty unique in that sense. So it's always good to know whether or not you're disrupting in a legal standpoint or whether you're just pissing off the establishment. But in general, the lesson is to focus your time and mental energy on serving the needs of your customers, not worrying too much about negative feedback.
How do you differentiate there in case of a constructive feedback versus this negative feedback? So there, you keep looking at them, or what's methodology did you use for that?
I mean, it's always important to listen to negative feedback. Sometimes they raise valid points, but if that negative feedback is purely coming from a sense of fear and from a need to hold on to the status quo, that's very different than actually constructive feedback that allows you to improve your product or service.
So why weren't these more expensive companies use 99 Design to outsource basically the things that they had to do and then improve on it afterwards and give it back to the customers at higher price?
Yeah, we've had a couple of 99 Designs customers who are actually agencies or using us to outsource work they had acquired on behalf of clients. And we're actually really supportive of that. Some clients actually wanted someone in a business suit who can talk the lingo to show up and draw fancy diagrams on a whiteboard and explain a logo. And clients are willing to pay $5,000 or $10,000 to have that assurance and that 50-page report to explain how the sphere in the logo could, relates to the axis of the earth and movement and innovation and all this stuff. There's actually a really funny example. If you Google Pepsi logo explanation, the agency that Pepsi hired to design a logo wrote an 87-page explanation about the Pepsi logo and the analogies and the diagrams they drew in that to justify their bullshit $1 million fee is just absolutely stellar. But some clients need that sort of assurance, and they wouldn't feel comfortable purchasing for $300. They're much more purchasing for $5,000, even if what they're getting is the exact same end product. They need that paper to show their boss and to cover their ass. So like in the old days, people say you never used to get fired for hiring IBM or for choosing IBM, right? People who have upper bosses in management that they have to report to, or want the consultant's professional opinion, and they want the designers showing up in the boardroom with fancy presentations and PowerPoints.
But that's good for you, isn't it? I mean, your people get work.
Exactly, it's good for us. We're happy for it. Because like I mentioned, those customers who have never bought from us because they weren't comfortable spending $300 for a logo, they felt much more comfortable spending $10,000 for a logo and having a middleman they can call up on the phone and show up at their office.
So I guess the 99 Designs, when you decide to pursue that, you have several different disruptive ideas. What made you choose pursue 99 Design higher?
So 99 Designs was actually incubated within SitePoint, my previous company. It was very, very lean startup style. As I mentioned earlier, you actually don't have to build a lot of technology to build a marketplace. The first version of 99 Designs was actually nothing more than a message board where companies would post requests for design work and designers would respond in the comments by attaching images. That was the very first version of 99 Designs. Second version was we charged the small business owners $10 to post a forum thread, and the designers would again reply in the comments with attachments in their design submissions. So it was only after we saw a lot of traction in that first version of the crowdsourced graphic design concept that we decided to create a new company and new model around it and spin off as its own separate brand, but it had a life of its own.
So before you commit to the 99 Design, have you tried different ideas and see which one had the big traction?
Yeah, we tried we always tested numerous ideas. One thing that we tested also was namemythingy.com, which was crowdsourced naming, which was very tricky actually because of trademarks and domain name availability and all the complexity around that, and the idea didn't work. So we test and fail a lot.
I don't know if this has been answered before, but what about the marketplace problem, 99 Design and Hired.com? You need both parties, right, to have a successful a business. And I'm trying to start a marketplace startup too, and there's this problem. Which one do I get first?
Yeah. I mean, out of all the types of businesses to start, you have to be extra special crazy to start a marketplace business. Because for most companies, you only have to find a buyer, you have to find the buyer and the seller, and you have to find them in equal proportion to each other. Otherwise, the entire thing tips over and falls apart. So the answer I gave to this question earlier was to focus on the harder side of the marketplace, which is usually the buyer side. But initially, you need to have the supply in order to approach the buyers with an interesting value proposition. So my co-founder, Doug Fierstein, previously founded a company called LiveOps, which is a distributed call center. And he actually went and signed up hundreds of home agents first before he approached the direct TV marketers and said, I have all these people who want to answer calls when people respond to your late night TV commercials. So you have to have enough supply to make it interesting for the buyer to at least talk to you and pick up the phone and have a conversation.
So I guess what are some of the steps that you take to validate the market? What are some of the milestones that, okay, this is where I think this idea is going to work and I can take it to the next stage? Is it just the user base or is it some other metrics or criteria that you had in mind?
So validating ideas. I'll give you the example of Hired because that was very MVP style. Literally the first thing we did in that company was build a single one-page sign-up form for engineers. We said, we'll put you up for auction, find out how much you're worth, interview with as many or as few companies as you want, no obligation, nothing, no cost, no credit card required. And then we went out and we emailed a couple hundred engineers. They actually signed up in droves. So that was our validation. If we hadn't been able to convince engineers that there's something in it for them for signing up for the service, we would have stopped right there. So that was first test. The second test was getting the employers to sign up. We thought, once we have all these engineers, it'll be very easy to go to all the startups. I'll just go on monster.com or startupjobs.com and search for Rails in San Francisco and email the CEO of every company that's hiring Rails engineers in San Francisco and say, come to my marketplace and hire some engineers. We have the solution to your problem. And what happened actually is that nobody responded to those emails. Not a single CEO signed up as a result of those emails. I sent a lot of emails. And there's a lot of open jobs in San Francisco for Rails engineers and iOS engineers and all the other positions that we had engineers for. So the interesting lesson from that was that sometimes you have to find another way to get access to your prospective customers. And in our case, the solution to our problem was emailing the investors of those tech companies and getting a warm introduction rather than going straight to the CEO ourselves. Because that gave us a lot of credibility and they were willing to try us. Even though I thought they would all respond to my initial emails because the value proposition I felt was so strong. So it was no upfront fee, no credit card, talk to as many people as you want. But so thankfully we didn't give up.
Did you guys, you've had a lot of success, but have you ever had any problems with other founders or with any sort of political things within the company you could talk about?
So far, no founder problems, no co-founder problems whatsoever. We've had problems with senior management team members, I guess the challenge there is you have to be careful about where you're recruiting from. In our case, we recruited a senior management team member who had worked at a really big corporation with tens of thousands of employees. He was their youngest ever ranking executive in that company. And what we didn't realize at the time is the way you rise up in job titles at a big 20,000, 30,000 person organization is you get really good at playing politics. So that was his strength, and that's why he was able to rise through the ranks. Unfortunately, when you're running a 30 or 40 or 50 person company, those skills are very, very different. You can't play politics, you can't create politics, you can't do all those things. So that was like one management hiring mistake that we made, was taking someone out of that big corporate environment and throwing them in a management position at a much smaller company where what they were good at, what they were the best at, didn't necessarily play well. And that ended really badly.
I have one more quick question. So with Hired, the buy side is the companies, right? So they're
You could also say the buy side is the engineers because they have an infinite amount of options.
Okay, so are you seeing any kind of like social capital? I mean, the engineers that are going to be getting the jobs, does social capital matter at all to the company?
In what sense, social capital in terms
I mean,
of?
is it more than just, are you a Rails dev or Java, whatever they're specifically looking for? Do they look into like cloud or anything like that?
We have not seen anybody hiring based on cloud scores or Twitter followers. We don't even, when we did our data analysis, we actually didn't even find that GitHub helped a lot. A lot of the best engineers actually don't have a lot of open source contributions, which makes sense because they're spending 16, 70 hours a week working for their boss and doing their job. So there was actually no statistical correlation, even though employers like to say, helps to have a good GitHub account, and it might get you noticed, and you might get more spam emails from recruiters if your libraries are trending on GitHub, but has no correlation as to how well you actually interview for the job and whether or not you get a final job offer letter.
If you extrapolate your strategy, do you think you flatten the world for every kind of service and product? And do you think that you end up helping more people in different countries that don't have this opportunity than you hurt existing status quo?
I think we do definitely flatten the world and open up a whole new realm of opportunity. So 99 Designs, actually our vision and the mantra that we lived by was create opportunity for designers. Like, yes, we served our customers, and if we did the right thing by our customers, they would tell their friends and they'd come and buy more. But at the end of the day, it was about creating opportunity for designers, whether that's through crowdsourced graphic design, whether that's through one-on-one projects, whether it's through design tweaks at Swiftly, etc. Back there.
Did you ever, during the process, pivot? Did you move from one idea that you had and didn't work, and you moved to another idea to work on it?
I mean, we tested many business ideas that didn't pan out, but 99 Designs has more or less been the same since inception. We've changed some minor tweaks around the dynamics of the marketplace, changed pricing and categories and how we sell and message, but it's been relatively stable. Same thing with Hired. Though initially we called the business developer auction, though that was very limiting. And the word auction was also associated with a lot of negative things. So it was actually very polarizing initially. We had some strong negative feedback, especially from employers, around the developer auction name. They said you're just going to drive up the price of talent and you're going to be creating all these mercenaries, and I don't want to compete based on price. We have a great culture, and it was never about price, but we pivoted to the Hired name also to allow us to cover off a much broader swath of job categories. So as we needed to hire a designer, we announced designers as a category, and we hired our designer. Then we needed to hire data scientists, so we launched a data science category in Hired, and we hired our own data scientists. Most recently, we need a product manager, so we opened up a product manager category on Hired, and we'll probably do the same for many other job categories over the next couple of years.
Is there a particular reason behind making candidate profiles available for just a week on Hired.com?
So why are candidate profiles available for just a week on Hired.com? That's really to create a sense of urgency for the employers. And number two, it's to to protect the candidate's privacy. So a job search is something that's very private. Most of the people unhired don't necessarily are unemployed. They're all currently employed. They don't want their boss finding out. So by limiting the scope of their job search to just a week and their profile disappears forever, it protects their privacy and it forces employers to review their profiles and make a go or no-go decision in a very short amount of time. And then allows us to do these weekly auctions. And every week we get employers addicted to logging in on Monday mornings and making their interview requests and etc. So time pressure has been very, very important to success. Otherwise, we're just building a huge resume database which exists on many other websites. The idea is that everybody on our marketplace has intent to start interviewing for jobs next week. So you better act now because they're going to get multiple offers if you don't.
Just picking your brains, how would you disrupt the airlines industry?
The airlines industry. I read an interesting stat and it said that the airline industry has taken more money from investors than has ever paid it back. So if you add up all the airlines created on the entire planet and all the investor money that's gone into them, and you looked at all the profits that the airlines has earned, it's like a net negative. So I don't know, you have to be crazy to do that.
I want to follow up on Raj's question. He asked you, when you created your first company, what was the most difficult thing?
When I created the first company, was the most difficult thing. So when I started my first company, I was 14 years old. And I was an online content website. I was getting a lot of traffic, and I was selling advertising to a lot of Silicon Valley firms. And they actually always wanted to talk to me on the phone to like close these $10,000, $20,000 ad sale deals. So I would actually schedule all my calls at the local Starbucks. And I'd always say, I have a hard stop for another meeting at 1 p.m. And in reality, that was like social studies class. So, trying to hide my age and, trying to make that work and then come back to social studies class having, closed a $5,000 or $10,000 deal, feeling pretty smug about myself. What's the hardest thing now? I mean, just never gets easy. The stress. I mean, it's all consuming. I have dreams about hired on a daily basis. I stress about clients and candidates, and I'm checking my phone the first thing when I wake up, and I spend more time with my business partners than my wife. I text Doug much more often than I do my wife. It's all encompassing. So once you're an entrepreneur, it just consumes your life, and you have your days when you're thinking you're going to take over the world, and then you have your lows where you think you're going to go out of business and have to fire all your employees, and it's like a crazy roller coaster. It's, that's always dealing with yourself and managing your emotions, and it's probably always the most challenging thing. Back there?
So I guess based on what you just said, what do you do, who do you talk to kind of like keep yourself level-headed and not be too in the clouds?
What do I do to keep myself level-headed and deal with the emotional roller coaster ride of finding a company? I've always had co-founders. I know some people who have started companies by themselves, and I have no fucking idea how they do it. I mean, it really helps to have someone who's going through the same thing at the same time that you are, and being able to balance each other out and keep yourselves motivated to keep going and see through their hard times. Going solo as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult, I think.
So can you talk a little bit more about how do you, when you experiment your ideas, and how far do you go, how much time do you invest in those, and at what point, how many users do you look for? Because I have a lot of ideas. I've won some hackathon prizes, and people like those ideas, and I want to iterate on top of those, but I don't know how far to take them, how much time to invest on those. So any guidelines on that?
I mean, it's liking ideas is one thing. Taking out your credit card and paying for something is different. So get those people who like your ideas to speak with their cold hard cash, and if you can't convert them, then it's time to change your value proposition. That being said, you have to be clever and not give up too early. Like the first auction that we ran for hired completely failed. Not a single person got hired. We didn't make a single cent. And like I mentioned earlier, we also completely failed at signing up any employers, so we started talking to their investors. So sometimes it takes a little bit of ingenuity to get the ball rolling. you don't want to fail. You don't want to give up on your first failure, but at the same time, if all signs point to no, then
How many months or how many like users you look for?
I have no idea. That's like, it depends on the situation, I would say. I mean, you look at growth and traction, and then you look at your net promoter scores. So net promoter scores, how many people couldn't live if your product didn't exist? How passionate are the users and customers that you have? And are people coming back over and over again? Are they telling their friends? Some interesting metrics to look at.
So how much of social media helped you grow the business, like Facebook, Twitter?
Social media? So I don't even have a Facebook account. I mean, it can be good for advertising. I mean, Facebook advertising can be very targeted be very effective for certain types of companies, but Twitter is kind of pissing in the wind half the time. It's bots following you.
Did you guys buy the domain hired.com?
Yes.
Can you tell me how much you paid for it?
6 figures.
Okay.
Like a nice car. The owner of the domain name hired.com had owned it since 1998. So we bought it and we didn't announce it for a few months. And for those few months that we owned it, I kept getting an average of like 3 emails a week from people trying to buy it off of me. So I imagine over those 10 years that had been close to 10,000 attempts to buy the domain name, something crazy like that. So why he finally decided to sell us, I don't know, because our offer was high, but wasn't out of this world.
Did you have to use like a agent, or did you just kind of figure out who it was and just call him directly?
My 99 Designs co-founder has a fake name and a fake email account, and he just did it, negotiated that way. So in general, you want to use your name, especially if you're well known or people can Google you and find that you have some backing or whatever. So then you lose all your negotiating edge. And Hired was actually our last choice. We went through many attempts to buy other names for the company that were whether we thought would be much cheaper or much more interesting. Hired was actually like our last kind of step on the road.
How did you find your co-founder, and how did you find your first engineer, assuming you didn't write a single line of code?
Okay, so I have 2 co-founders. My co-founder who's technical, Alan Grant, who's the CTO of the company. I met him when he hacked 99 Designs, and we banned him. So I thought that was very entrepreneurial of him, and I had known him for several years. My second co-founder, Doug Fierstein, we were actually on a marketplace panel together one evening, talking about stuff like this. Afterwards, we went to an Indian restaurant that plays rap music, and we started drinking pitchers of beer, and we're lamenting about our inability to hire engineers. Alan, who's the CTO, had just spent a week at Rails conference. He spent whatever $5,000 on ticket, flights, and hotel, trying to recruit engineers for his own company. He had been completely unsuccessful. Spent a week and $5,000, came up empty-handed. Said, fuck this, I'll build the MVP product. If this helps me hire a single engineer, it'll be worth my time. And now he works full-time on this. So, any other questions? Raj?
So you talk about marketplace where most of your customers are online users. So what about a product? What are your suggestions for an enterprise software or maybe a product for healthcare, where just getting into that is so difficult? How do you disrupt that kind of market?
I mean, healthcare is probably one of the most difficult markets to disrupt simply because of all the regulation and because a lot of the budgets are controlled by big bureaucracies. So you kind of want to find industries where you can get early adopters who have decision-making capability and are willing to try new things. There was a great blog post on Pando Daily the other week, and it basically said, solve big, blatant problems. Don't solve problems that are aspirational and that require a lot of selling. Paul Graham also had a blog post along similar lines. He basically said, solve a narrow problem that's very deep. Find something that's so painful that companies are willing to take a risk working with a 2 or 3 person startup, because if you can solve the pain point problem for them, they'll be so thrilled. It's worth checking out those blog posts. I can send you links afterwards. How are we on time? Okay, a few more questions.
Idea is yours when you're bringing the other partners. What is the revenue share model you offered for them?
One more time?
So you have the business idea. You are bringing your other co-founders.
The business idea was collaborative, so all three of us.
It never be your own. You are not bringing the team to build that. It was not your own. It was a collaborative, all you three.
The idea was collaborative, so I don't even know who blurted it out when we were drinking beer at the pub, but I think we were all too drunk at that point to remember. But 99 Designs, I mean, the idea grew up organically out of SitePoint. There was like an even split between me and my business partner.
You may have heard of Digital Point back when SitePoint was being used.
Yep.
And Digital Point helps you sell websites, domain names, all of that. But the usual problem with DP was the spam and the lowballing offers. How did you end up, making SitePoint? Because when you go to SitePoint or other domain marketplaces that you own, the quality was inherently better. So how did you achieve that? And how do you keep all these spammers out?
So the question is, if you're running a marketplace, how do you keep up spammers and low bidders and low quality listings? And the answer for that is simply curation. So on Hired, we keep out bad companies, we keep out bad candidates to optimize the experience. Just the same way that Lyft and Uber vet all their drivers to ensure a consistent experience. So that's one of the interesting things about marketplace that you have to decide early on is, are you going to curate or are you not going to curate? And how much curation is too much? At what point are you just choking growth? So that's something that's a very, very critical decision.
But is this curation manual?
So initially for Hired, I was the sole curator. Okay. I reviewed every single engineer that made into the auctions.
So one last question.
Okay, back.
What can be crowdsourced?
What can be crowdsourced? I can tell you the names probably can't be crowdsourced since I tried it. That was a tough one. I mean, the thing with crowdsourcing is the project has to be short and simple enough that someone can take a risk on doing it without really affecting their livelihood. So a logo might take an hour or 4 hours if someone has inspiration. You probably can't crowdsource a book. You can't ask someone to write your 300-page novel, and you only pay one person for that, unless the number is really, really high. I mean, there's some fantastic examples of crowdsourcing. Even Netflix crowdsourced its recommendation algorithm. They paid out a $1 million bounty for the data science team that was able to create the biggest improvement over their status quo. So, I mean, generally crowdsourcing applies well to smaller projects and bit-sized pieces of work, not something particularly complex or something that requires a 50-page briefing document or an innate understanding of a particular company or industry. Or.
So then why didn't the naming work? Because it's quite small and short.
Yeah, so exactly. So we thought naming would work because it's short and simple, and anybody can start with a dictionary and churn out names for companies or products or services. It didn't work because the companies that were the contest holders, essentially, often were running into trademark issues or domain name availability issues. So like, I love all these names. It's going to take me forever to get research all the trademarks on these, and then most of them don't have the domain names available, etc. There's been 3 or 4 other companies that have tried it. I think Nameforce was one of them, and it's just really difficult. Last question?
You've had a bunch of successes now, like 5 or so companies, right, that have been successful. How many duds have you had, or ideas that just never took off?
So all the companies I founded are still operational, so none of them have folded. There's many ideas, and countless. Yeah, I can't even count how many have failed. One of the biggest oh shit moments ever came, when the .com implosion happened, March of 2000. At that point, my entire business was reliant on advertising sales. And all of a sudden, every company that we worked with started going bankrupt because they weren't able to raise further venture capital. And we had all this traffic, we had employees, we had an office. The company was bootstrapped, so we didn't have a huge pile of cash as a cushion. That was definitely one of the more oh shit moments. And the solution that we came up with was simply by analyzing what people were doing on our site. And it turned out that when people were learning to program PHP or JavaScript or what have you, is they were printing out our tutorials and having it sitting next to their keyboard so they could follow along. So the most popular link on our site was print this article. It actually makes sense because you think about it, back in like 1999, 2000, people didn't have 2 monitors on their desk. And they did have a monitor. It was one of those big-ass motherfucking bulking CRTs, right? So when you were programming and learning to code and you're following a tutorial, it was much easier to have that printout next to your keyboard that you could follow along rather than switching back and forth between Windows and your computer. So what we decided to do to make money is we decided to turn our most popular article into a print-on-demand book. It took about a week and a half to put together. We started charging $35 for it, and the book went on sale like 20,000 copies. That was like our MVP test. Will people pay us for the privilege of having the content printed out on their behalf? That was actually a little bit disruptive at the time as well, because we became the only tech publisher in the world that sort of had direct-to-consumer model. It's not just the same way, Bonobo's pants you can't buy at Nordstrom or Macy's. All our books you could only buy through SitePoint.com. And that meant that we didn't have to give up 55 or 60% of our margin to Borders and Barnes & Noble. What most people don't realize is that the bookstores are basically, work on a contingency basis. The publishers ship truckloads of books out to the retailers, and those books and products don't sell. They come back as returns, and you have to give back your money to Borders and Barnes & Noble. And plus, if they do sell, you give up 55 or 60% of your margin. By having a direct-to-consumer model, we had crazy high margins. I mean, we're printing books for $3 and selling them for $40. And we were able to build a long-term relationship with our customers, where people went on to buy 5, 10 books of ours. And if you talk to Wiley, who owns the For Dummies series, they have no fucking idea who their customers are or how to notify them that a new edition of their JavaScript book comes out. It's just have to ship off another carton of books to Borders that get stuck on the shelf, hopefully in the right category, and if they don't sell, to give the money back. So it's a cool story. Thank you.